Hey there, I'm Neil. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the host of my new podcast, Pause and Rewind. I'll be chatting to changemakers, thought leaders, and role models who all share a common goal. They're striving to make the world a more inclusive place. And let's face it, we need it. Each guest has a unique story when it comes to doing their thing, and we often know who people are in the now. But how much do we really know about them? Pause and Rewind takes a moment to explore the experiences in my guest's life that led them to where and who they are now. Because everyone loves an origin story. We'll dive into tales, anecdotes, and what makes our guests tick. So, are you ready to pause and rewind? Hey there, thanks so much for tuning in to Pause and Rewind. Now, you're about to listen to an amazing conversation with the wonderful Nancy Didia. Nancy is a highly experienced corporate executive with over 25 years of working in diversity, equality, and inclusion. She's now officially retired, but she is doing things on her own terms, and that is still really centered around inclusion and this sense of justice. And through the conversation, you get a real sense of Nancy always fighting and willing for the underdog. And I absolutely love this conversation. I hope you did too. So check it out and yeah, let me know what you think. Hello, Nancy. Welcome to Pause and Rewind.
Hello, Neil. Great to be here.
How are you?
Fantastic. And as I said to you earlier, better now seeing you and being here with you today.
It is so wonderful. I'm so excited that you've kind of agreed to join me. This is a new podcast, and I know we've only known each other such a short while, but in that time, I've absolutely loved getting to know you, and I'm really excited to dive into your story.
Oh, thank you. I am too. And as you said, even though it's been a short period of time, I feel like we've known each other for ages. So that speaks to our connection. So moving forward today is going to feel really great as we both get to know each other better and I share a little bit more uh, about who I am.
Who you and where and what are those key moments that made Nancy Didia? So, Nancy, just before we hit rewind. What does the world look like for Nancy Didia right now?
Right now, the world is a much more serene, peaceful place for me. After spending more than 3 decades in corporate America, I decided to rewire my life, which translates financially into retiring from a corporate role, but experientially rewiring into really leveraging my coaching and advisory experience to help others to be their best self and to deal with what are the known challenges of showing up authentically in the workplace and also just living life in today's polarized, very challenging world, and being able to show up in a way where you feel like you can. So that's where I'm at now, doing my best work, being my best self, and working with great people like you. Without having to get it approved, I decide what I want to do and what I want to say. And that is the best part of being a solo entrepreneur.
I love the showing up and I love the unapologetic authenticity. I have a tattoo on my arm that with the theme for my 40th birthday was unapologetic as fuck. And it really what you just said is kind of like that not having to ask permission. You make the rules. I love that.
It's such a departure from being in a corporate role. It felt very militaristic. When you think about a corporation, right, and the structure, it's very hierarchical. And it's fascinating that I grew up as sort of a rebellious child, right?
Oh,
And to put right, we'll get there, to put myself into such a uh, hierarchy where you have to follow the rules, follow things. But it explains why I was in the roles that I was in around culture and uh, inclusion and diversity and um, all of those important things that hold space for people to be authentic. So I can't wait to dig in.
Me too. Me too. And this series is all about focusing on inclusion heroes for me. And so, yeah, super excited. So, Nancy, are you ready to pause and rewind?
I'm ready to pause and rewind.
Let's do it. So, tell me all about little Nancy. What were you like?
Well, I may be dating myself by using this terminology, but I was a classic tomboy. And probably in today's terms, I could have identified as a trans child because I really wanted to do boy things. And I competed a lot with boys. I beat them up. I was much stronger than they were. And when they would, you know, tease me, or push me, I'd push them back. Um, I got in the dirt. I wasn't a girly girl. I didn't like playing with dolls. I always had a ball in my hand. So a ball, a bat, um, a mitt, for baseball, a football. I had roller skates, a bicycle, and I played basketball, volleyball, tennis, gymnastics. I was kind of a jock and I loved it. I was probably in the best shape of my life, but now I would say I'm in the best shape of my life, both emotionally and physically. So I was daddy's little girl, and I think I was probably the son he always wanted. So on um, certain holidays, I'm a native New Yorker. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, in a cement backyard, in a small bungalow home, about 800 square feet, very small, two bedrooms, one bath, and just a very small home. And the houses were attached, and there was no grass. I mean, it was just a cement backyard. So we were near water, and I spent a lot of time fishing and going to the beach because we were near the Atlantic Ocean. But in the summer times, I spent it upstate New York, near the capital of New York State, near Albany. And I met a lot of um, country friends, and we would do hay rides and we'd go hiking and snowmobiling and sledding. So I was a very active kid, but I was also rebellious. I smoked my first cigarette at 12 years old and hid them in the rocks in the woods so I could go out there and then the boys, would hide 6 packs of beer. On Friday nights we'd go into the woods and drink beer. Smoke cigarettes, and then as drugs became more available, every once in a while take a hit off of a joint. And but that was as far as I went. I never really indulged in any other substances as a teenager besides marijuana and beer. Um, and it wasn't until I improved my palate as I got older that I moved to more fancier cocktail and an appreciation of distilled spirits.
I think we share that.
Yes.
And it sounds like you had an amazing childhood and like to do all of those things, and growing up in New York, like concrete jungle, but to still have such like an active lifestyle is amazing. And what are some of your earliest childhood memories or some of your favorite anecdotes that people have told you about you when you were growing up?
Hmm. Well, first and foremost, I was, as I still am today, a very energetic child. And I loved all the food that my mother cooked. I was one of those kids that ate everything. I ate vegetables. I loved vegetables. I loved Italian cooking. Um, and there's something about Italian Sunday sauce, which you may have heard. And that usually is a meat sauce comprised of sausages and um, meatballs, homemade meatballs. And the traditional way that it works now, I was very young, is my mother would make the meatballs with a cheese, Parmesan cheese and eggs and a little bit of garlic and parsley, roll them and then fry them
Oh my
in
gosh, this
olive
sounds
oil.
lush. Like I'm salivating.
And I used to steal the meatballs before they went into the tomato sauce, and it would drive my father crazy. And one time I ate four meatballs. Uh, I was so active. I was like 90 pounds at the time, but, I never gained a pound. And he was just so upset with me because we had company coming over and he felt that I dug into their share of food. So it was something about me and meatballs that people remember that and there was something about the meatball before it got coated with the tomato sauce because I didn't like it after it was in the sauce. I liked it just as it came out of the hot frying pan.
I'm not a fan of tomatoey sauce stuff either. I would much rather eat meatballs and pasta plain.
There you
Um,
go.
yeah. Meatballs. Wow. I love that.
One day, Neil, when we're together in the same continent, I will make them for you.
Okay, I
Um,
mean, this sounds like a winning recipe, but you can spare me the tomato sauce and we'll just eat them as they are. Um, so you've kind of elaborated on what you were like at school, and I'm really kind of like I'm loving this story. In America, you have yearbooks, right?
yeah.
Did you have a yearbook, and what did it say you were most likely to be?
Oh gosh. Um, well, it did not say what I turned out to be. I can tell you that. What I will tell you is I was a very good student. I was in the top 10% of my high school class uh, for my engagement in the class, and we had these different exams. In New York City, they were called Regent exams. They were state qualifiers that would help you get into better universities. And I scored almost 100% on all of those.
Wow.
But with with that having smarts like that came bullying. And also, um, I did not recognize my identity until I would say my early 20s. And I don't know, it's hard. I look at this now. I don't know if I just ignored it, but I was very interested in boys. And I don't know if that was for a conquering reason to be better than them or whatever the case may be. But it wasn't until I graduated high school that I fell in love with this man that I met in my first year of college because I graduated early. I only went to high school for 3.5 years. In the US, it's 4 years. And I graduated 6 months early. So I began to feel more like an outsider, and I wasn't part of that clique anymore. I was really focused on becoming a broadcast journalist.
Okay.
And yeah, and I wound up studying communications, and that's where I met my former uh, ex-husband now. He was the engineer in the college radio station, and he interviewed me for a newscaster role. And he and I definitely fell in love. And that semester, that September, I was scheduled to go away to college, and I did for 1 year. And I left, and wanted to come home to be with him. And I got married at 20 years old. And 2 years, 3 years later, I knew I had made the wrong decision. And my identity just started to come through. And I had to end the marriage, unfortunately. It was somebody I really cared about a lot. And really be true to myself and follow my true identity. But having to deal with bullying, um, I was also one of those people that always looked for the underdog. So because I was so proficient in sports or capable in sports, I would pick the least likely person to be on my team, where other captains would let that person just not be chosen. So I always chose the not the first pick to be my first pick because I wanted to bring them in.
Does that, I'm thinking that probably says a lot about you now. That's probably something that was really kind of an early sign that you were going to be doing what you were doing now. And we'll come back to that in a bit. I just want to jump back a little bit and just talk
Yep.
about this kind of contradiction in terms of this really rebellious child that's kind of running around um being kind of super active and beating boys up. I love that. And then this really smart kid that's getting 100%. How do you kind of like marry that up?
Hmm.
What was that like? And you spoke a bit about the bullying, but did people struggle to get their heads around that?
You know, I was smarter than I accepted, and I just it lots of things came natural for me, and you know me well enough to know I'm not bragging here, but
No.
this is a retrospective. Um, and so while most of my friends were getting jobs in supermarkets or gas stations, I chose to become a bank teller. And I was paid $2.35 an hour. And I did that after school in a shopping mall. There was a bank in a shopping mall. And I hung out at the time, I was 16 years old. I was hanging out with college kids. And I learned so much about just wanting to grow up quickly and be with them more because I was able to culturally relate to an older crowd. I always felt like I was an old soul. And the crowd that I was with the exception of my neighborhood girlfriends, um, I never felt like I fit in.
I was going to
I,
say,
yeah.
does that come because you said you didn't discover your identity until around kind of like your 20s
Mhm.
and what that led to. But when did you first kind of get a real sense of the world and who you are in the world? Because it sounds like you were really in tune with the fact you knew you were rebellious, but you knew you were really smart on what you were capable of.
Hmm. Oh, gosh, it was late in life. I mean, I came out at 25, which was almost more than 3 decades ago. And I was working for a major New York City bank. And suddenly my career became the most important thing for me. And so I focused on um, building a career and really wanting to soar to the top. And before I was 30, I became a vice president of banking on the retail side in New York City. And that was, and I was working on technologies, but that's when I started to get exposed to New York City more. And I met some gay people or some queer people, and my life started to change. And that's when, um, and it's interesting because today our queer colleagues or queer friends have so much more freedom to be than I did in the 80s, the 1980s. And the lesbian movement was very much underground, and it wasn't well known, and there were only a handful of bars or places that we could go. And those places where we went were sanctuaries, and those were areas where we could breathe. So after I divorced, I began to pursue that identity. And boy, was that just a true coming out. I mean, that was just an expression of really having a weight lifted and being able to live my life much more fully and not having to make up stories or bring uh, s- bring cisgender or hetero men with me as my alleged dates to show that I was paired up with a guy.
It sounds like you kind of almost had two realizations in life, because it sounds like
Yeah,
you started as this really rebellious person that kind of was really unapologetically smart and unapologetically rebellious and a tomboy at heart, and you're really kind of like owned that. But then you kind of came into this second sense of self when you discovered the queer scene. And I totally know what you mean about just being able to breathe. And just there is something so beautiful about being in truly inclusive queer spaces.
yes,
Not
yes.
you don't always see truly inclusive queer spaces now. And actually, it sounds like, when lesbian bars being pushed underground, it feels like there's a little bit of that now. And I know that's a separate topic, but there's a big thing in
Mhm.
London around kind of get lesbians out of the basement. Stop putting lesbian bars in the basement, for fuck's sake. It's so annoying. But truly inclusive queer spaces are they're heaven. They're
Yeah,
literally a safe haven to be.
uh, absolutely. And those were the types of things, the types of places you would look forward to. And I do liken it to um, a botanical experience. If you've ever walked through, I'm sure you have, the beautiful gardens, English gardens in London, um, that sense, or in the Lake District, that sense of joy that you get being surrounded by all of this beauty. And that's how I felt when I was in community with other lesbians and other gay men. And there's still, to your point, even in that era, there was a big silo between the gay men and the lesbians. And it was very much similar to the male-female situation, but now we see a lot more acceptance and integration. But it depends on the city that you're in, because there have been many gay bars where I've gone to and have been completely ignored
Yeah.
in terms of service. And on the contrary, there have been many gay bars I've been to where I couldn't stop talking, to the people around me. So
Yeah.
I
That's
don't
what you
want to
want.
make, yeah, I don't want to make a blanket statement, but what I do think is relevant to all of this is how our world has changed around queer acceptance. And I actually am proud to say that I was a part of that transformation to help us get to where we are today. And I'm not stopping. I'm still at it. So, yeah,
About it. We've got to keep at it. We've got to keep at it. And
absolutely.
there's on the queer scene in London, I always talk about the queer scene is typically built for white gay men, unfortunately. And there's a lot of misogyny, and you just need to keep having to kind of break down those barriers, particularly from within the community. But I just want to take it back to your teenage years, because obviously
Yes.
our teenage years are quite formative. We often experience our first heartbreak. Our bodies change. For many of us,
Yeah.
we come out, or we come out a bit later. But what did your teenage years look like, and how do you look back now and still see your teenage self?
Hmm. Um, I always had a boyfriend, right? And I felt that that was important. And I had lots of boyfriends. I kind of bounced around, and it was just okay. It was. I just uh, I just thought it was important to have a boyfriend, and there was, there wasn't really any intimacy on uh, a deep level that occurred until probably closer to 18 or 19. But there was a lot of, you know, um, spin the bottle games and, kissing in the closet for 7 seconds with some kid, some guy, and some school trips and lying to your parents and going to a friend's house and there are the kids outside smoking pot and the other group to the right drinking liter big liters of beer or malt liquor. Um, we spent a lot of time in schoolyards, playing handball and paddleball. So I'm a big racket person. And I'll just tell you, I have not set foot on a pickleball court because I'm a tennis player. So I've got a little I've got a little bias to
Are you a bit judge? Are
pickleball.
you a bit judgy about
I'm a
pickleball?
being judgy about
Oh, I'm
pickleball.
I'm a
I've never
huge
played.
Brene Brown fan, and she is a massive fan of pickleball. She always talks about pickleball.
She loves it, and it's new for her. I know. So you and I share that in common. Um, I do remember, but that's a story for another day. Um, her talk on vulnerability is what was her claim to fame, right? That
Mm.
20-minute TED talk. But anyway, back to being a teenager. Uh, I was really focused on making sure that I hung out with people that I related to. Um, and I was moving more into, now you have to remember, this was a very difficult time in our country in the 70s, right? It was uh, after Martin Luther King was shot, there were civil rights issues, right? A lot of segregation in the New York City schools, um, Vietnam War, all of these issues growing up in a very conservative household.
Mm.
I would have battles with my father on liberal issues. And I was a student of the public school system, and my father accused the public school system of being communist. And so he was one of those types of thinkers, and he would, and that frustrated me because I became very much a progressive, um, left-leaning thinker, and that's carried through primarily because I grew up very, I don't want to say very poor, but lower income. Um, my father was a bartender, and my mother uh, didn't work. So we lived off his income and tips, and we were not wealthy. I lived on hand-me-downs, and when I got my first job, I had to pay them room and board. So I was only making 150 a week, and I had to give them a portion of that. And I bought my own little car. I got a 1972 Toyota Corolla. I got my driver's license at 16, and I had a little car to take myself back and forth to work. And then, we were drinking and driving, which I should have never done. But, that was, gosh, almost 45 years ago.
Yeah.
You know,
It's a different time. It's a different time.
it
But
was,
one thing that's coming through is just you're really, you know, not discovering your identity in terms of kind of your sexuality until later and
right.
going through a marriage breakdown at a very young age. We're still a child,
Yes.
20 is no age now. But all through this, maintaining this really strong sense of self and independence and um a real sense of what equality and fairness and injustice was. When you've gone through kind of Martin Luther King being shot and segregation, is some of what's going on in society now reminiscent of that in terms of how you feel?
What a great question, Neil. Absolutely. When it really is reminiscent of that. And George Floyd, um, 4 years ago, really activated I don't want to use the word triggered, but activated these emotions in
Mm,
me that were, uh, I, I truly, I had a lot of friends that were different, and I resented and rejected the homogenous groups of women. So I would socialize more with the the kids that were being bussed in from the more predominant black neighborhoods. Or yeah, I was, I was a protester,
yeah.
much to my father's chagrin. And on the day
Much to mine now as well. So we have this in common.
it's unbelievable. But I do remember the day Martin Luther King was shot. I was 7 years old, and I came home that day, and my father was like, you know, what happened in school today? What'd you do? And I said, we sang, we sat in the auditorium, and we held hands, and we sang "We Shall Overcome." And my mother was like, wow, that's amazing. And my father was like, God damn these teachers. That's, such a communist approach. And he was a communist. And my mother was like, don't say that to her. And I'm like, he wasn't a communist, Dad. You're getting brainwashed by those liberal teachers. And
Wow.
yeah,
We can
um,
just see it. It's re repeat, repeat.
it is. Rinse, repeat. And it's no wonder that I do the work that I do today. But you're right. It was latent, Neil. It
Mm,
came out
yeah.
later. And the deeper I got into corporate America, the more dysfunction I saw in leaders. And the more I experienced the Me Too movement. I was part of that era. And I was definitely harassed and discriminated against. And even when I came out, I even got harassed again, and, got those classic comments. Well, if you find the right man, they'll convert you back. Those types of things. I experienced a lot of emotional abuse in my life, both at home, from my father, and in the workplace.
How do you think that that manifests itself in your determination to make the
Mm.
world a more loving, compassion? We've spoken about compassion, a more compassionate space.
Well, I think years of therapy helped. In terms of recognizing that it wasn't me, that um, the reactions that were coming from my father, more so my father than my mother, um, were more about his insecurities. So beginning to understand the value and the power that I had, and ways that I could help others. And that became crystal clear around about 25 years ago. And that was after I was diagnosed with cancer. And I was in a support group, and unfortunately, everyone in that support group died, uh, but me. And watching people, mostly in my age group, die was a very eye-opening, life-changing experience. And I found myself um, thinking in different ways, and thinking about the things that they were going to miss in their life. Um, Many of them had children, And, they wrote letters to their children for when they got married because they weren't going to be there. So that shifted. And I remember in the support group, the facilitator of the support group said to me, Nancy, this experience has changed your life. And if you don't see it now, you will see it soon. And the moment you see it, you will recognize that there's no stopping you and your work will have tremendous impact on this world. And I giggled. I'm like, yeah, right. And unconsciously, I pursued work where I was inspired, and that was helping others. Uh, and I'm a helper. That's what I do.
It sounds like that was the moment where you found your destination in where you are now.
I'm still on the journey, though,
Still
Neil.
on the journey.
I
Yeah.
am.
Yeah. We're pausing
Yeah,
and rewinding, but there's a whole fast forward to go through. So
absolutely.
originally wanted to be a broadcaster,
Yep.
bank teller, and
Yep.
then through overcoming these obstacles in life, this adversity and dealing with all that. Thank you so much for sharing everything you've shared. There's some really heavy stuff there, and you've kind of harnessed it to become this person who is a fierce ally, advocate, individual who's just really harnessed all of those experiences and they've really shaped you are. What are the biggest lessons that you'd want to leave people with hearing your story?
Mm. Never stop believing in your potential. Right? And I think that we unintentionally create our own limitations. And what really drove me is that I never stopped trying. I never stopped trying out for a team. I never gave up on myself. My mindset when I was diagnosed with cancer was very positive, and that helped my healing. Granted, it wasn't an advanced stage cancer, but still, um, mindset is very important. Gratitude, being grateful for every day. And every day, I know this sounds hokey, but every day is a gift. And we have an opportunity to decide how we're going to use that gift that we've been given, which is life. And we can share it, we can harness it, we can hold it back. But I think acts of kindness. And I'm one of those people at the bus stop that talks to other people and or gets approached by other people. So I get
Same.
strangers. Yeah,
Same.
right.
My husband says it's because I've got a really friendly face, and actually,
Yep.
I don't always feel that way. But people do just kind of like talk to me, and I'll always have a chat with people. Everyone says that London's not friendly. You can always find someone to have a chat with. I love
Well,
that. Yeah.
you and I must we would probably miss our bus if we were at that stop together.
Hey, I'm sitting there all day. I'm sitting there all day. Does happiness and success look and feel how you thought it would?
No, it actually is way better than I ever anticipated.
I
I
love that.
never thought I would have been in the C-suite as an executive in human resources, in diversity, in culture. I never saw myself getting there because actually I wanted to be in law enforcement growing up. And that wasn't to bully people. That was for fairness and equity. And that's why I wanted to go that route. Political science and law was a possibility, but I was not interested in the long term schooling at that point. And I wanted to make money quickly.
Yeah.
So that's why I went into corporate right away.
I love, and a lot of people are talking at the moment about like, strategizing and planning out your career, but you've shown that it's just not that linear. You can weave and you can pivot and you can flex and still be successful and still be happy. Who's someone that you'd like to give a shout out? Someone that's really shaped you?
Hmm. Oh my goodness, there are so many people. My sister had a tremendous influence on me growing up. There's 16 years between us, and she pretty much exposed me to a lot of New York City. She was in theater, and she introduced me to a lot of people. And it actually was because of her that I got to meet my current wife because she encouraged me to go to the gay center in New York. And so I think helping me to get back on track after my first lesbian relationship broke up, and I met my current wife, I would say my sister was very much a part of my formative years. Yeah.
Thank you. What's your sister's name?
Maria
Maria.
Didia.
Big shout out and love to Maria.
Thank you.
What are you most proud of looking back? And I'm very mindful of this question because it's not an end of question. Like, there's kind of looking back, you've got there's so much more to look forward to. But looking back over all of that you shared today and this moment of reflection, what are you most proud of?
I think my career um, growth and trajectory. And I'm not sure I mentioned this earlier, but I never finished college. So I got to where I got without an undergraduate degree, without a master's degree, although I feel like I've earned that through the grace and grit of plodding through corporate America. So I'm very proud of coming from a low middle income family to becoming a very successful um, executive that can, uh, live a healthy life and be grateful for those I've helped um, and help pave the way. So I'm proud of the people's lives I've touched in sponsoring them and in helping organizations to grow and conform and being it's it's such a great question because when I retired, I basically said, I'm good. I did everything I wanted to do, and now it's time to um, relax. And so while I'm working, it's a it's a different angle now.
It's a
So I'm
different
proud of it.
angle. It's a different
Yeah.
angle. And there's so much conversations around midlife women when they retire. They either kind of go and experience the sunset or they go into decline. But actually,
Yes.
that's not the case because there might be an element of relaxing, but you've not really retired. You're still cracking on, but you're doing it on your terms.
You got it. That's
Love
exactly
that.
right.
The House of Happiness is London's ultimate sober clubbing extravaganza. We're led and delivered but created for all, whether teetotal, sober curious, or just taking a booze snooze. We love a day rave, and on a Saturday afternoon you can expect banging house tunes, DJs on decks, dancers on podiums, and a fully stocked alcohol-free bar. Flamboyant, bold, with a glitter station to boot. We're all about safe, inclusive fun, and we even have a pre-meet so that you can make new sober buddies before you hit the dance floor. Grab your tickets from Instagram now at House of Happiness Official, and we'll see you on the dance floor. I've got some quick fire questions for you. Are you down?
Okay.
Okay, cool. What album or movie has had a lasting impact on you?
Oh my goodness. One of my favorite all-time albums is the Beatles' Magical Mystery Tour.
Okay.
I loved that album as a child. Movie, you're going to find this really strange, but I'm very proud of my Italian heritage. So, The Godfather 1 and 2 are my favorite movies, especially the scene in Sicily. And it just explains everything about the Italian culture.
Love that. Thank
Uh,
you. What's the saying that you live by? and one that you'd
Mm.
want to put in the bin.
Hmm. Well, let's start with the one that I love thinking about. And one of my sheroes is Maya Angelou. And she has said something to the effect that people may not remember what you've said, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. And I think that I carry that with me in terms of respect and dignity for every person that I meet. I'm one of those people that say hello to the janitorial staff, the cleaning staff. People are people, and I appreciate people for who they are. So that's
Absolutely.
it. And what I throw in the bin, it is what it is.
That's mine. That's mine too. That's
No way.
and I basically did so much work with my coach on putting that phrase in the bin because it made me really complacent and it made me accept less than what I deserve. That's so funny. I love that you said that. Yeah.
Brilliant. I love the way that you work through that too.
Yeah, it was hard. It was
Mhm.
hard. And I really don't say it anymore. But it took work. What's been the best adventure of your life so far?
Mm. Oh, my trips to Italy. And actually finding my cousins and I was about 16 when that happened and staying in touch with them to this day and becoming fluent in the language. So going to Italy and Sicily was the best time of my life. And I went back by myself at 16, 17 years old and spent 2 weeks
Amazing.
there with the family.
And really
So
touching base with your Italian roots.
you
I
got
love
it.
that.
Yeah.
Because Nancy
Yeah.
Dia is such a cool name. Like, yeah,
Thank you.
very Italian. What three words would you use to describe your origin story? So I love the concept of an origin story. Like, this is everything we've been talking about today. And pause and rewind because everyone loves an origin story. What three
Hmm.
words would you use to describe it?
Food, wine, and flowers.
I love that. I love that.
Uh, Food was very much a topic in our house, and you never had a meal go by without wine. And at 6 years old, I had wine with a little bit of ginger ale put in it
Okay.
as a kid. Uh, and flowers, always about gardening and pretty flowers surrounding you.
What's your favorite flower?
The peony
Okay.
and the hydrangea.
Okay. My friend Claire
Yep.
loves peony. I'm a big fan of gladiolis.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, my
They are
favorite. And
beautiful.
you know what? I actually genuinely think it's from the film Drop Dead Fred, where she's allergic to gladiolis, and I think that's where it comes from. That's yeah. That film has shaped me, and when you get to know me, you'll see how. Um,
Yes,
Nancy, we have paused and we've rewind, but now we're ready to fast forward.
yes.
What exciting things do you have coming up?
Hmm. Well, a couple of vacations. I like being by the sea. And so the Maine coast in New England is one of my favorite places to be in the summertime. Um, Actually, some house hunting or finding a new place to live. Um, so that's coming. So moving back to a community where we can be closer to the things that we like and reestablish our life again because we've been doing a lot of elder care. So I'm excited about that adventure. And in the next week or so, I'll be heading to a warmer climate just to relax and get away. Not my favorite place to be, but it's still the location I'm going is Florida, but it's I'm not happy with the governor there, but I am just going to enjoy a few days in the sun. So,
Block that out. Block that out. Pretend he's not
yeah,
there.
exactly.
What brings you joy? Now, I know food and flowers, but
Yes.
what brings you joy?
People feeling good about themselves. Um, and seeing a situation that perhaps didn't start out well and helping that person to see the beauty in themselves or the richness of the situation rather than the downside. So watching people grow and change is what brings me joy.
I'm the same. I absolutely love seeing my friends thriving
Yeah, it,
and
it's uh, it's amazing.
yeah,
Yeah,
and taking time to comment on it as well. Make a point of saying it,
yeah,
letting them know that they're seen.
exactly. That acknowledgement is so crucial. But on the more personal side, joy is my downtime, my
Same.
Friday nights where I can relax and maybe have a cocktail and spend time with my cat. I play hide and seek with my cat. She's
What's your
incredible.
cat's name?
Minxie.
Minxie. That's cute.
Yep. She sh she and I actually run through the halls. I hide by the behind doors and we scare the you know what out of each other. But we do play hide and
I
seek, and
love
I
that.
run through the house saying, "Where's Mixie? Where's Mixie?" And all of a sudden she'll jump out, and so that brings me joy. That's a mindless, belly laughing game.
Love the belly laughs. We need more belly laughs,
We
especially
do.
especially right now. Bring it on. I love
Absolutely.
that. Closing two questions. What takeaways do you have for anyone listening wanting to carve out a career in inclusion?
Be aware that um, if you're following this because it's a passion, there will be challenges that come along the way that could interrupt the passion and force you to do things that don't always align with the passion. So while it's a very important activation to be a part of, it's also a very challenging, draining um, place to be. But it definitely has impact, and it comes with a community of people that are committed to the same. But I don't want people to go into it knowing that it's all um, unicorns and rainbows because it's not.
It's
It's a
not.
hard job. It's a hard job, and it's unless it's ceaseless, especially more this time, at this point in our lives than it was even 10, 15 years ago. It's much more palpable and much more unpredictable,
Yeah. And it can be very uncomfortable sometimes.
very uncomfortable. Exactly.
And it should be, actually.
Indeed, the more comfort you feel, then I would say the less you're doing your job.
Mic drop. Um,
Yes.
Finally, what words of wisdom, encouragement, or advice do you have for anyone out there to help them get to wherever they're going?
Surround yourself by people who really know you and care about you and will hold you up uh, regardless of their day, but be there for you and not be judgmental. So surround yourself by positivity, believe in yourself. And before we take ourselves down, always ask yourself, how true is uh, what I'm believing about myself? And if this is a thought that you are manifesting in your head, shift that thought to a visualization of you arriving at what your destination should be for you.
That's so beautiful. Nancy, thank you so much for taking time to hit pause and rewind. I'm so grateful to have spent this time with you. I'm so excited about getting to know you more, and it's just been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Oh, Neil, thank you. And I am thrilled to be a part of the uh, launch of the Pause and Rewind podcast. So, this is not only an honor, but a privilege. And I look forward to many more conversations. So, thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much. Speak soon. Bye.
Bye.
Oh my God, I absolutely loved this conversation so much. I was absolutely buzzing off the back of it. I think what shone through is Nancy's real sense of self. You know, she knew who she was at a young age, this rebellious kid that was smart as hell and not afraid to own that as well, but also really kind of willing to step into the idea of discovering your sense of self again and again through life. Nancy really showed that life, like relationships and careers, they're not linear for all of us. And there's a real beauty in that. And look at everything she's achieved as well. Nancy's so humble. At one point, like I love that she said, you know, I'm not bragging, but she really kind of like owns her success and what she's pushed through. And I just love listening to her. I love the conversation. Nancy, thank you so much for being on Pause and Rewind. And I can't wait to get to know you more. I can't wait for you to listen to more conversations with more amazing people working in inclusion. Stay tuned for more episodes. Share it with anyone you think might want to give it a listen. And yeah, tune in for more. Cheers.